We've been advised by minority staff that Senator Hirono is on her way from the vote, and that in the interest of time, it might be best if I went ahead. So we'll do that. Certainly would not have done that without permission of Senator Hirono's staff. The Senate Armed Services Subcommittee on Sea Power convenes this afternoon to examine Navy and Marine Corps aviation programs. Our subcommittee welcomes three distinguished witnesses: Vice Admiral Paul A. Grosskлагs, Commander, Naval Air System Command; Lieutenant General John M. Davis, Deputy Commandant for Marine Corps Aviation; and Rear Admiral Chip Miller, Director of Air Warfare for the Department of the Navy. Our subcommittee is grateful to these witnesses for being here and for their decades of dedicated service. I'd like to offer special thanks to General Davis, who for some reason is retiring next month after nearly 37 years of service. Best wishes to General Davis and his family. The United States faces a complex and increasingly dangerous security environment. This subcommittee is well aware of the challenges posed by China and Russia's military modernization and assertive behavior, North Korea's belligerence, and Iran's malign activities. The Islamic State also remains a potent threat. To confront these challenges, our country relies heavily on Navy and Marine Corps aviation. However, 15 years of continuous, high-tempo operations and years of inadequate budgets have strained our aviation forces. Congress has not delivered sufficient and predictable funding to our naval aviation forces. I look forward to hearing from the witnesses about the long-term funding requirements necessary to regain full-spectrum readiness. Today, our subcommittee will examine 5 key areas related to the Navy and Marine Corps aviation programs. First, physiological episodes. First and foremost, the safety of our Navy and Marine Corps aviators remains paramount. The subcommittee remains concerned by the persistence of these PE episodes experienced in Navy aircraft, particularly the FA-18, Hornets and Super Hornets, EA-18G, and T-45s. This situation is naval aviation's #1 safety priority. As subcommittee chairman, it remains a matter of great personal interest. In early April, I made a fact-finding trip to Naval Air Station Meridian following a widely observed instructor-pilot boycott of training flights at Meridian, Kingsville, and Pensacola. I spoke with instructors and students and also senior leadership, including the Commander of Naval Forces, Vice Admiral Shoemaker, and the Chief of Naval Air Training, Rear Admiral Bull. I've also received updates from each of our witnesses, which I appreciate. After my visit to NAS Meridian, the Vice CNO directed the Commander of Pacific Fleet, Admiral Scott Swift, to conduct a review of the facts, circumstances, and processes surrounding the PE issue. We hope to get an update on this today. Overall, the Navy needs a plan to get T-45 students back flying safely and to fix the problem for the long term. Looking toward the future, the subcommittee would like to hear assurances from the witnesses that the Navy and Marine Corps are taking action to prevent the F-35 from suffering the same problems. It's worth noting that Luke Air Force Base temporarily canceled flying operations last week after 5 Air Force pilots experienced physiological episodes. Next, aircraft readiness, our second area of interest. The Navy and Marine Corps lack sufficient numbers of ready basic aircraft for aviators to remain qualified, proficient, and motivated. The witnesses should discuss the Navy's budget request for depot maintenance, flying hours, and spare parts. Third, our subcommittee would like to learn more about gaps in the Navy fighter fleet. The Navy's strike fighter shortfall will continue to expand unless enough aircraft are procured to replace the 24 to 36 aircraft which are retired annually. The CNO and Commandant both included strike fighters on their unfunded priority lists. In fact, the Navy's #1 and #3 unfunded priorities are Super Hornets and F-35C Joint Strike Fighters, respectively. Our witnesses should provide more details on unfunded requirements for multi-role fighter aircraft. The fourth area of interest is development of operations of the F-35B and F-35C Joint Strike Fighter. While F-35 is approaching the end of its development phase, the Marines are already flying the aircraft operationally. Earlier this year, the Green Knights permanently changed their home station to Iwakuna, Japan, and will make the first F-35 shipboard deployment in 2018. The subcommittee looks forward to hearing an update on F-35 operations and the lessons learned from the first units to fly the aircraft. Finally, our subcommittee would like an update on inventories for air-launched munitions. Inventories for many of our weapons remain critically low. At the same time, technological advances by our potential adversaries require us to modernize our munitions to remain relevant. The subcommittee needs to understand where the Department is taking risk, what is being done to mitigate that risk, and also comment on the industrial base's ability to produce the required munitions. So I welcome our witnesses, and if we will pause for a moment, we'll check on the whereabouts of our distinguished.
Here she is.
My goodness, I couldn't have timed it better.
I've heard my name.
Now, Maisie, you know I went ahead only with permission.
Oh, of course. You always have that.
Well, we're delighted to see you, and we know you are very, very busy this afternoon and will have to leave to attend another very important matter. You are recognized.
So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also, of course, like to welcome our witnesses for this afternoon's hearing. We are grateful for your service and for the professional service of the men and women who under your command. Today, we have an opportunity to discuss how the Department of the Navy's fiscal year 2018 budget requests for Navy and Marine Corps aviation programs would help increase readiness, huge issue for all of our services, address shortfalls in munitions, pilots, and maintenance personnel, and modernize our strategic deterrence capability. Navy and Marine Corps aviation programs play a critical role in supporting and advancing our country's strategic interests in the Indo-Asia Pacific region, including, of course, from bases in Hawaii. Last summer, I attended the dedication of the first of 2 new MV-22 hangars at Marine Corps Base Kaneohe. In April, 4 Ospreys operating from those hangars departed Kaneohe Bay for the Royal Australian Air Force Base Darwin after flying nearly 6,000 miles. This flight demonstrated how the operating range of our MV-22s and the strategic location of Hawaii permit us to reach across the Pacific Ocean to respond to the ever-growing threats in the region. These threats require us to consider how best to get the Navy and Marine Corps the resources that you need. But we must also make sure that any increases in resources do not come at the expense of important domestic programs that families, including our military families, rely on every day. In this request, the administration is asking for a $54 billion top-line increase above the total budget for fiscal year 2018, prescribed in the Budget Control Act, or BCA. Of that total, the Department of the Navy budget would receive an increase of roughly $12 billion. Unless Congress can achieve a broad and bipartisan agreement to repeal or modify the BCA, any approval of the $12 billion increase for the Navy and Marine Corps will trigger sequestration of a similar amount in domestic programs. And this increase would come at the expense of huge cuts to health care, environmental protection, and State Department programs critical to our national security. And I'd like to mention in that regard, like Hawaii's East-West Center. This is a non-starter. As Secretary Mattis said this morning, no enemy has done more damage to the U.S. forces than what we've done to ourselves with the BCA. Mr. Chairman, I look forward to working with you and other members to eliminate sequestration in a way that balances the needs of our military with critical domestic programs. We cannot continue down this path. As we consider the fiscal year 2018 budget, we must also consider the significant challenges we face in naval aviation. While the Marine Corps has been operating the F-35B variant, we need to hear more about how testing on the F-35C is proceeding. We also need to understand better how other parts of the program are supporting the Navy's initial operating capability declaration plan for 2018, or OCD. In the budget, the Defense Department is also asking for authority to execute economic order quantity, EOQ contracts, with the F-35 program in advance of successful completion of operational testing. Normally, Congress has not approved EOQ authority unless and until the weapon system in question has completed a successful operational test, and we will have to consider this matter carefully. Second, the Navy is facing a major shortfall in its strike fighter inventory. The Navy responded to forecasts of a shortage of almost 200 aircraft several years ago by better managing the remaining life on the existing aircraft. They've done this by redistributing aircraft within the force, designing a series of maintenance and rehabilitation measures, including a service life extension program, or SLEP, for older aircraft, and buying new F-18 aircraft. The Navy has predicted that SLEP would lead to significant improvements in its ability to support operating forces, such as aircraft carrier squadrons and Marine Corps squadrons, for several years. This year, however, the Navy is still having difficulty moving F-18 aircraft through the SLEP lines, which means that fleet squadrons are having to make do with fewer aircraft. This puts a strain on the whole system. We need to hear about actions the Navy is taking to improve this situation. Navy and Marine Corps pilots have been experiencing problems with the environmental control systems in certain aircraft, mainly F-18s and T-45s, that have resulted in what is referred to as physiological episodes. We need to hear from the services what progress is being made to address those problems. I'd also like to hear about the investments the Navy and Marine Corps are making in training and maintenance operations. General Davis, yesterday at our meeting, I was encouraged to hear that Marine Corps Aviation has chosen to focus significantly on training and development for pilots and maintenance workers, both officers and enlisted personnel. Sending Marine aviators and maintainers to the Advanced Aviation Management Training course is a demonstration of your commitment to improving readiness and getting the aviation fleet back to where it needs to be. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I certainly look forward to hearing from our witnesses. Mahalo.
Very good. Our distinguished ranking member has to testify at a hearing and may be able to come back and be with us. But Admiral Grossklags.
Sir, I'll be giving an opening statement for all three of us.
Oh, okay, good.
Chairman, Ranking Member Hirono, hope she comes back. Distinguished members of the subcommittee, it's our pleasure to be here with you today to talk about naval aviation and our programs. Our 2018 President's Budget Submission is governed by the Secretary's priorities to improve warfighting readiness by addressing pressing programmatic shortfalls that have accrued from 15 years of wartime operational tempo and chronic underfunding of many of our readiness accounts. This budget request is designed to maintain the operational effectiveness of our current force while also building a bridge to growing the future force starting in 2019. Current readiness of our naval aviation forces is clearly, as you stated, less than it needs to be. The fiscal year 2017 enacted budget provided much needed increases in funding for many of our naval aviation readiness accounts. Our fiscal year 2018 request builds on 2017 with a request for funding of these readiness accounts that in both real terms and as a percentage of the requirement is to a level not seen in 8 to 10 years. Support for these readiness accounts is the most important leverage that we have in returning our aircraft to the required state of readiness. Close behind is the need to continue and in some cases to accelerate the procurement of new aircraft. This includes F-35s for both the Marine Corps and the Navy, as well as additional F-18 Super Hornets for the Navy. As we continue to struggle with extending the service life and maintaining the readiness of our legacy F-18s, both services are working to accelerate the transition to other aircraft. In addition to the F-35B and C models, critical priorities for the Marine Corps include initiation and the ramp-up of CH-53K production, completing the procurement of the KC-130J, execution of the V-22 Common Configuration Readiness and Modernization Initiative, also known as CCRAM, and initiation of the MAGTF Expeditionary Unmanned Air System, also known as MUX, MUX. Each of these priorities is a key contributor today and in the future to Marine Corps' capability and capacity to meet O plans and combatant commander requirements. On the Navy side of the house, in addition to the F-18s and the F-35s required to minimize our strike fighter inventory challenges, priorities include initiating service life extension of our F-18 Super Hornets, pushing forward with MQ-4 Triton procurement, awarding a development contract for the MQ-25 carrier-based unmanned tanking aircraft, continued development of the next generation jammer for our Growlers, and fielding of the long-range anti-ship missile on initially the B-1 and then the F-18. Now, we will continue to leverage every tool and opportunity available to drive down the cost of each of our programs. And this subcommittee has been very supportive of our efforts in the past, and we are again asking for your support for a couple of initiatives. One is the V-22 multi-year program, which will support the final 7 years of planned Marine, Navy, and Air Force procurements. And the second one, already mentioned by the ranking member, is the F-35 EOQ associated with the block buy. And I'd be happy to talk about the importance of that in more detail if we have the opportunity. Separate from the procurement focus, this subcommittee is well aware, as you stated, of the continued challenges that we face in resolving the high rate of physiological episodes that we have seen in our T-45s and F-18s. It bears repeating that this is naval aviation's #1 safety issue, and we continue to approach our mitigation steps and our search for root cause in an unconstrained funding perspective. As we continue to assess potential root causes, we in parallel are focused on implementation of aircrew alerting and protection devices and systems so that we can resume student training in the T-45 just as soon as possible, but keeping in mind that safety is the #1 priority. Now, our aviation priorities are directly tied to the increasing worldwide security challenges. Our ability to achieve the improved readiness, increased capacity, and enhanced capabilities required to deal with these challenges remains constrained by the overall resourcing constraints imposed by the Budget Control Act and the often inefficient use of resources driven by the seemingly chronic extended execution under continuing resolutions. You have our commitment to making the best possible use of the resources we are given, and we ask this subcommittee's continued support in working to eliminate these barriers. I want to thank you again for your support of our sailors and Marines, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Well, thank you very much. And I said this morning at the full committee, and I'll say it again today at the subcommittee level about the chronic underfunding. We really do need to join hands and address this once and for all. I would remind members and guests and everyone listening or watching that the reason we adopted sequestration in the first place was as an incentive to make us come to grips with entitlement programs. Entitlement programs like Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and of course interest on the debt, which is only partially within our control. The good news about these very valuable safety net programs is that we don't have to cut them. They need to grow and will continue to grow, but we simply need to grow them at a slower rate. And it is the inability of the House and Senate and the collective administrations to deal with this issue that got us to sequestration. So I am not the least bit proud of our record with regard to this chronic underfunding. We certainly don't need to use sequestration as a way to shortchange the warfighter. And we certainly don't need to shortchange national security, the security of Americans. But it is worth saying that it is a failure because we have been unwilling for whatever reason, unable for whatever reason, in both parties and at both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue to come to grips with simply slowing the growth rate of these excellent programs that we all depend on. Admiral Grossklags, I appreciate the information your team has given to all of us about the PE issue. And you mentioned it in your testimony, but you know, if you're sick, if a person is sick, the most important step is a good diagnosis. Once we get the diagnosis, physicians know how to come in and give the right medicine or the right treatments. We're having a diagnosis problem with the physiological episodes. And so tell us where we are, and I appreciate Admiral Miller and General Davis coming in and speaking to me yesterday about this. But how are we doing on the diagnosis? And are you able to give us any hope on a timeline to solving this problem?
Yeah, sir, we're not doing well on the diagnosis. We are can have two parallel paths under execution right now. As you said, it would be far easier if we could find out what the root cause was and then go after correcting that root cause. To date, we have been unable to find any smoking guns. I'll refer back to an exception to that here in just a second. But for T-45 specifically, where most of our issues to date, almost all of them have been associated with what we'll call breathing gas issues as opposed to the pressurization issues in the cockpit that we've seen with some of our F-18 incidents. We do
toxic oxygen, actually.
Well, to date, we have not been able to discover a toxin or a contaminant in the breathing gas, despite our testing. Just to give you a snapshot without going into great detail, we have taken several of the aircraft from Sinatra, from the training squadrons, brought them up to Pax River, and we have torn some of them apart to the extent that we took every single component in that gas path, that breathing gas path, if you will, out of the aircraft, starting with the engine and going through the entire system, inspecting all the piping in between, all the way up to the mask and the vest that the aircrew wear. We've subjected each one of those individual components to extremes of testing, extremes of environmental conditions in excess of what we would ever expect to see in the aircraft. And we still have not been able to find what we would consider a proximate cause of contamination or something being released into that gas path. We are also doing testing at the system level where we're flying the entire aircraft. Again, these are aircraft that had issues down at Sinatra. We're flying the entire aircraft with additional instrumentation on the aircraft, trying to detect stuff in flight real time. To date, we have not been able to find that root cause. We have not been able to diagnose the problem. In parallel, for T-45, because obviously one of our concerns is getting back into the training environment as quickly as possible. But we've focused on 10 to 12 different alerting or protective measures for the aircrew. And it is our plan that once we are comfortable that we've got those individual items all in place for every single aircraft and aircrew down at Sinatra, that is at the point where we will consider resuming the training syllabus. We believe that will probably be a matter of weeks instead of months, but there is still some testing of new equipment that we intend to put on
The full training syllabus.
Yes, sir. So that's kind of our path, the two parallel paths on T-45s. On F-18s,
Well, sir, on the training syllabus now, what are you able to do and what are you not able to do?
to date, since the beginning of April, end of March, we have not flown any training events with the students. The students have not flown at all. Our instructor pilots are flying some currency flights, They are not using the oxygen generation system, so they're basically breathing ambient cockpit air. And because of that, we've restricted their flight envelope to 5,000 feet and below and less than 2 Gs. So a relatively benign environment, but sufficient for them to remain proficient in flying the aircraft.
We're going to lose a crop of undergraduate pilot?
We won't lose them permanently, but we delay about 25 a month if we don't start flying students again. So if you say the end of June, we will racked up about 75 students that have been delayed going to their next squadron, which would be the Fleet Replacement Squadron.
Senator Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses for your testimony and service. A couple of disparate items. The force structure assessment recently has led the Navy to readjust their thought about the size, the number of ships from 308 to 355. But I was interested that the force structure assessment didn't talk about what that would dictate in terms of aviation. And since a lot of the ships have an aviation component, I would suspect that that's kind of the next ask. There would be a kind of an aviation follow-on component that would change if we were able to grow the Navy to that size of ships. I'm sure there isn't an answer to that question today, but I would just love you to address that issue. What are we likely to see as the Navy contemplates the shift in the number of ships and what that would mean in terms of additional need for aviation assets?
Yes, sir, I'll go ahead and take that. As you know, in the budgets of 17, the whole focus was on readiness, and on 18 now it's continue that readiness and look at the wholeness. So the question that you ask is really what we're working in the building right now as we're putting together the 19 budget. Part of that is, okay, we envision eventually getting back to 12 aircraft carriers, which is going to require an extra air wing. So with the timing of that, how you then would flow in the aircraft to be able to support an extra air wing to be able to deploy on that 12th carrier is something that would have to be mapped out and, of course, have the available resources to be able to do that. On the surface side, the largest contributor to aviation support to our surface Navy has to do with our helicopters. And currently, the H-60 inventory that we have meets the requirements that we have currently in our surface fleet. Again, once those plans are determined on when and if we're able to grow the Navy per what we assess the needs are, then we would obviously lay in what a procurement program that would be able to support that from the aviation side.
Okay. Just wanted to have some sense for, as you point out, future. I'm on the budget committee too, and I'm curious about this. We've had some posture hearings in the main committee with Air Force, and one of the issues we've talked about is the issue of maintainers. So we're talking about aviation programs. Platforms is one thing, pilots critically important. I was a little struck in the Air Force discussions we've had that some of the workforce gaps are more significant on the maintainer side even than the pilot side, and both are significant. Talk a little bit in the Navy and Marine side about what you're doing to deal with the maintainer workforce.
Thanks for that question, Senator. We've done 5 independent range reviews in the Marine Corps and looked at all the things we need to do to ensure that our legacy fleet generates the range requirements we need as a Marine Corps. One of the things that came out of that was not the numbers of maintainers we have, but the overall qualifications of the maintainers we have, especially with a little bit different readiness model for the United States Marine Corps than the United States Navy. So we actually, we needed a higher density of maintainers in each unit and tailored for each unit's mission out there to make the range requirements. And we looked at those qualifications and how hard it is. It takes 2 years to make a collateral duty inspector. It takes 4 years to make what they call a CDQAR, which is the next level up. And kind of your master mechanic takes 7 years on average to make those. And it's kind of consistent between the Navy and the Marine Corps. What we have done is we've mapped that for each and every unit and now providing incentives starting this July to keep Marines who earn those qualifications, and they're the very best Marines and sailors inside those units that do that, and keep them in the densities we need to make our range requirements out there. The second thing is we've looked at, I ran our fighter weapons school in Yuma, Arizona for 2 years. Great job to the CEO of that schoolhouse. And we've, about almost 40 years ago, we created MOTS 1 to go make sure we are at the top of our game in standards and best tactics, techniques, and procedures to go fight the looming threat on our nation's bow. We didn't do that for our aviation maintainers. We are doing that now. So a kind of a companion schoolhouse a top wrench, if you want to call it that, for our young officers and our maintenance Marines to make sure that they are sharing best practices and getting the very biggest bang for the buck we can out of our Marines.
Excellent, excellent. I'll ask you one other question, if I could, and this is one for me and for Senator Tillis, so if he comes in, tell him I had his back. We have training ranges that we use heavily, Navy and Marines do, off Virginia and North Carolina. With the advent of fifth-generation aircraft, are we making the investments that we need in maintaining the usefulness of those ranges, or do the ranges maintain continuing viability? Because some of the platforms have some additional, bells and whistles to them.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question, because when we talk about wholeness, everyone likes to look at, hey, I'm providing this object, whether it's a new F-35. But with that comes the whole training apparatus that goes with it. So not only from the maintainers that are maintaining the aircraft, but for the aviators that have to fly it, the decision makers, as we put together, and as you well know, Comp 2X exercises are pretty large events that we do off of the coast of Virginia. So we are making investments in live virtual constructive. We have to, with the threat that's continuing to evolve, with the tactics that continue to keep pace with the threat, and with a lot of the new equipment, we have to transition the way we train. So it's a combination of using simulation, combining that with live assets, and also being able to throw constructive threats out there. For example, to be able to have a scenario that has representative threat aircraft, we probably don't have the adversary support to be able to do that. So we're going to be able to, we need to evolve the way we train. And so that live virtual constructive aspect absolutely needs to start down at the basic level, where I'm learning how to fly an airplane, and hey, I need to connect an E-2 to an F-18 in a simulator. And then as we use the building block approach, as we prepare our carrier strike groups and our amphibious readiness groups to deploy, to be able to take it up to the fleet-wide level of training as well. So there are definite investments in live virtual constructive, and it's all part of the wholeness aspect of our approach to new weapon systems and new platforms.
No other questions. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Although I think General Davis wanted to maybe weigh in briefly, if that would be acceptable.
That would certainly be acceptable.
Thank you, sir. That's a great question, sir. What we're finding with operating our fifth-generation airplanes, we actually expanded Townsend range to accommodate the mission profiles the F-35s can bring to the fight, and we're seeing it every day in Yuma. For Senator Tillis, we're already looking what we need to do off the coast of North Carolina to make sure that the Cherry Point facility is ready to take those airplanes. The fifth-gen airplanes are changing the way we train and changing the way we fight and change the way we think about fighting in a very dynamic way, in a very good way. It's really good news for the nation, but these airplanes we're finding require, the standard formations aren't close formations like I grew up flying. They are separated by tens of miles. Bottom line, the airplane's perfectly comfortable flying like that, fighting like that. Also, will fly and fight in bad weather as well, and allow our, so training is not just how we train in the air component, but it's how we train with our surface forces and our land forces out there as well. The other day, doing close air support through the cloud with F-35s for guys on the ground. That was something we probably wouldn't do with a high degree of fidelity, but now they're actually not only to do that, but see the targets through the cloud. I think it's going to change the way we do business, both live, virtual, constructive, but also, too, the mandate for us to protect our training ranges and the airspace over those training ranges. It's going to require some different thinking, and it'll be a national asset for all of us with these new airplanes.
Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your service. When it comes to the readiness or the capabilities or the availability of your aircraft right now, could you share with me what the readiness percentages are? I think the last couple of months, it seemed that the unavailability was somewhere in excess of 60% for FA-18s and so forth. Could you share with me what your readiness capabilities are? And it seems to me that the F-35B variant, being new, was actually having a pretty good capability rating, even this early in its current development, if you want to call being 7 years late current. But it seems like its capabilities were maintaining in excess of 80%. So could you share with me?
Yeah, I can give you some generic numbers. We can drill down on each platform if you want, but you're about on the money. We are currently at a mission-capable percentage as of the 24th of last month at 56%. So it was mission capable across the fleet. For the F-35 in particular, the F-35B, we were actually above 80%, as you stated, so it's doing very well.
Yeah, sir, if I could, that's looking at VMFA 121, VMFA 211, getting ready to be VMFA 122, and then the 501, which is our training squadron in Beaufort, South Carolina. Focusing on 121, very active squadron. It's 10 of the 16 are over there now. The next 6 show up this summer. They are, every day, I track them every day, between 75 and 85%. So very high readiness rates. Marine F-18s in particular right now running a little bit less than 50%, although we're trending up, and Harriers is better than that. But bottom line, the newer metal gets us to higher readiness rates across the force. Those F-18s are old, trusty airplanes, but we're finding that with a readiness rate, we're doing better in F-18 now. Our flight time per pilot is going up significantly. Last time we talked, we're still shy of our objective. But we have a break, they start off in the morning, we have a 55% break rate with the older airplanes. So they start off in the morning, you've got them on the line, you worked all night to get them up. You used to do a 6, turn 4 to get your training objectives, and that's how we'd fight as well. A lot of those airplanes, half of those airplanes are breaking after the first go. So we're not getting the numbers and the production we need out of those old platforms.
I have to share, I had the opportunity to fly with the Blue Angels last fall in a demonstration, and I think these guys do their best to break them sometimes. I know I was going left when he was going right on several different occasions, and I wasn't that far away from him. And so
You're scaring me, Senator.
I'm just telling you, these guys are good, but they put those aircraft through their paces, and you can see why they have some challenges once in a while. But that's the way they need to train, the way that they need to fight, and those aircraft have got to be as top notch as we can keep them. I'm just curious, Admiral, you indicated 56%. Is that across the entire fleet, or is that across the fighter fleet?
That's across the entire fleet, sir.
How about if we just change that to the fighter fleet right now? Where are we at then?
Probably, well, certainly a little bit less than that. If we're talking about F-18s of all makes and models, it's probably right around 50%.
Okay, thank you. You indicated that the anti-ship missile that's being developed earlier, if I heard you correctly, originally or to begin with, you were going to be placing it on the B-1.
Yes, sir.
And then eventually transitioning over to the F-18. I presume that would be on the Super Hornet?
That's correct.
The F and, okay. Can you share how that would be utilized if it's on a B-1? It seems to me that that's a new capability that we're talking about for the B-1, or a new use for the B-1?
I got to be a little bit careful
Okay.
here. It's a derivative of the JASSM missile that's already carried on board the B-1. It has a different target set, and it will be used differently, but a mission is very compatible with that aircraft as well as with the Super Hornet.
Well, having the Ellsworth Air Force Base as one of the homes of the B-1, we're always happy to hear of new mission sets for the B-1 as well. When it comes to the F-35, and I recognize, look, this is the aircraft of the future for Navy and the Air Force, or the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines. Over its lifetime, the F-35 sustainment is projected to cost over $1 trillion. Most alarming is that this cost may be underestimated. Based on data from the Air Force and the Marine Corps concerning F-35 variants at testing and operational sites, parts are being replaced on average 15 to 16 times higher than the assumptions used across the life cycle of the Joint Program, or JPO, estimate. Another GAO report highlights a multi-billion-dollar increase in each of the services flying hour programs. My question, based on procurement of 20 additional F-35Bs and 4 additional F-35Cs in 2018, what impact will this have on the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Marine Corps in terms of your O&M challenges?
I can answer that one if you want,
Yes,
Paul. First off, we got to be driving costs out of all of our programs. So we're actually running shy of the estimates for what it's going to be to run the F-35 in the Marine Corps. And so we're kind of out there in front of, the Air Force is building up steam right now. But what we're spending to fly the airplane is actually less than we estimated. And we also just hired an outside firm to go look at it, because even though it's less, I'd like it to be even less. We believe we can take significant amounts of money out of what we're spending just by doing it differently, working that in conjunction with the Joint Program Office, Lockheed Martin, and the engine manufacturers. to drive costs out of this program. So what we do know is we have a winner on our hands. As we put more airplanes, as you have more airplanes in the fleet, you'll actually be able to drive cost out. Right now, it's costing me a heck of a lot of money to fly the legacy airplanes and get readiness out of that. And that's a very expensive proposition when you have airplanes you can't fly, but you're still trying to maintain them because they're broken. The F-35 has got a high readiness rate for us right now, also to working in driving cost per flight hour down and the O&S costs out. So we're attacking that very aggressively. The Marine Corps did that as a beta test, but we're sharing our information with both the Navy and the Air Force, and we'll do that at the CEO conference here coming up this week. But we believe we can drive costs down significantly, sir.
What about that replacement rate that Senator Rounds mentioned? Is that accurate?
I'd have to get back to you on break rate for parts on the airplane.
Admiral Grossclag, is that going to continue?
I think we'd have to get to the specific components. I would not be, quite honestly, surprised if we saw that for some number of components on the airplane. I would also be willing to bet that there's some number that are having lives in excess of what we predicted. And that's pretty typical with every new aircraft we introduce to the fleet. We in industry make assumptions and calculations on what the reliability of every single component is going to be, and then we are continually surprised. And we have to either buy more spares, which is not a good answer, or we figure out how to deal with the specific reliability issue associated with those components you're talking about.
General Davis
Fix
says,
it and make it better.
General Davis says this is a winner. Admiral Grossclag, should we be proud of this aircraft?
I'll answer quickly and turn it over to Admiral Miller. I think so, sir. I think we are in a fairly good place from, as I've been watching the completion of developmental test. General Davis can talk certainly more about how it's performing for them operationally. But I think in terms of the development process, we're on very solid ground at this point. And I look at a couple of key metrics, one of them being software stability. As we want to get to the final 3F software configuration before we introduce the aircraft in the Navy, we're very closely watching the stability. And we have seen over the last year to 18 months the in-flight stability go from where they were having a system reset or having to do something with the system in flight from about every 5 hours to the most recent software releases are about every 40 hours, which is more than acceptable for us right now. So I think we're making
good to hear, isn't it, Admiral Miller?
What's that, sir?
That's good to hear, isn't it?
Oh, it's great to hear, and we're quite excited. General Davis says it's a winner. We absolutely agree, and I get the question a lot. Hey, tell me about this F-35 versus F-18, and I say it's not a versus. The complementary nature of both of these aircraft into the future for our Navy, our aircraft carrier Navy, is very exciting. We've taken F-35 out to the ship already. About 150 traps. This is with fleet pilots, 100% boarding rate, no one-wires. It was a dream to bring aboard. So as we integrate it, the fact that we're getting supersonic stealth, data fusion, the sensor netting that this airplane is going to be able to provide, it adds capability, lethality, and survivability, not just to the air wing, but to the entire carrier strike group. The way we integrate it with our Aegis ships and our baseline 9 configuration, the way we fight it alongside of the capability that it brings with the capacity that the Super Hornet brings under the control of an E-2D and with the capability of a Growler is just exciting for us guys that are carrier aviators.
Thank you.
Good, sir.
Yes, General Davis.
From the Marine Corps side, we also track the Air Force numbers as well. It's hard to put a qualitative or number on what an airplane brings to the fight. But the Air Force, and we are seeing similar operation in our major exercise. We just got back from big exercise in Alaska, sir. 20 to 0, 21 to 0. I mean, the exchange rates for these airplanes going to highly contested environments, operating in weather that we wouldn't be able to operate in before, electronic warfare mission, strike mission, air-to-air mission, and in the hands of what were pretty inexperienced young guys flying airplane. It's exceptional. The other thing, if you combine that with the Marine Corps being all F-35 STOL and F-35C force, but the ability to go land in an expeditionary-based force, 75% of our air in the big fight is ashore with the capability to go back aboard the ship, and 25% aboard the ship. For the Marines, where we go, we're going to be probably in a kinetic fight. You cannot rule that out. So the ability to go take that airplane from an amphibious ship, go do a strike mission, land at a forward operating base ashore get rearmed without ever shutting the motor down, which we practice with the F-35 right now in our weapons school, and get airborne again to go basically take what are the number of airplanes that you have, look like more, and be more, is a truly incredible capability. You can do that in any climb, any place, and any threat.
Thank you. General Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to discuss an issue that doesn't come up too much on the readiness with regard to naval aviation. There was an article, and Mr. Chairman, I'll ask that this be submitted in the record. It was from the Marine Corps Times last year. Title is Marine Corps Aviation Fleet is in Peril.
Without objection.
Thank you. And one of the things that this article highlighted was it's not just readiness, but actually the safety of our aviators when they're not being able to fly. And so this whole article talked about how marine aviation-related deaths hit a 5-year high in September, so this is last year, when fatalities reached 18 during the first 9 months of 2015. And there's a quote from a retired Navy commander who was a pilot saying there's a direct line between flight hours and mishaps. The less they're flying, the less they're training, the less maintenance personnel are getting involved, the higher the mishap rate. So can you talk about that? We always talk about, hey, we're not ready to fight, but maybe even more troubling is our lack of readiness is potentially risking the lives of our aviators who are already in a very dangerous profession.
Here's how I'd couch that, Senator. Watch it very closely. And every one of those losses affected me personally deeply. What I would say is we're flying safe airplanes. We're not flying them enough. I would say probably the bigger threat out there is, so when you don't have enough hours, you can fly according to the book safely, but what you're not getting is the looks of the ball to be as tactically proficient as you should be. To me, the primary player at risk is the Marine infantryman that counts in these airplanes to deliver close air support fires, air-to-air fires for them, or assault support for them, that the pilots and the crews aren't as practiced as they should be in doing that under every threat condition that's out there. So we've not been able to draw a line with the mishaps we've had to a lack of proficiency with those crews out there.
Well, I think it's good, General, that you guys are focusing on that, because obviously, you know, readiness is one thing, we want that, but if we're losing lives because we're not training enough, I think that's shame on all of us.
But as the nation's force and readiness, we have to be ready to go, especially a small force, small in size, supposed to be high state of readiness. That readiness has taken a hit over 16 years of fighting. Flying airplanes were built in the 80s, and then at a depth of dwell 1 to 2 that General Neller talked about this morning, sir. All that puts wear and tear, and it's just not enough time and not enough power tools to train the aviators to the degree they need to be truly on their A game for that force and readiness. So the risk for us is there. We need to get out of this beaten zone of low readiness, low inventory as quickly as we can to provide the fires we need for our Marine Corps to be that force and readiness.
I want to follow on Senator Kane's point, and what you mentioned, General, is I did get to see just briefly the F-35 Bravos that were in Alaska, and you know, as the Navy and the Marine Corps fielding the F-35s, the discussion about having a much bigger range complex for the standoff to be able to train better with these fifth-generation aircraft is critical. So I would welcome all of you to come on up and see the Joint Pacific Alaska Range Complex, JPARC, which some of you might be familiar with. The Air Force obviously is very familiar, but you know, that has an air size bigger than Florida, and we're actually expanding it. You can do CAS. It's got the SAM simulations, and the Air Force is up there a lot. I had General Neller up in Alaska 2 summers ago, and there was a squadron of Hornets that had just done the red flag exercise and stayed after, and they happened to bump into the Commandant of the Marine Corps on a Sunday morning, which was a little bit, I think, stunning for them. But the squadron commander said to General Neller that was the best air-to-air training he had ever done in his entire career. So we would welcome, you know, and whether it's Northern Edge or Red Flag, getting up and seeing that, because There's a dedicated F-16 aggressor squadron up there. It's probably the best air-to-air training on the planet, and it's only going to get better when the F-35s are fully fielded because the space is so huge. Any comments on that?
Sir,
Extolling about the great training at J Park?
I wish I was still flying gray airplanes like that, so I could be up there in Alaska flying with those. I'll tell you that, and I'll speak for Navy brothers as well. We like to deploy, we like to go train, we like to train hard. It's a great place to train hard up there in Alaska. It's new, it's great adversary support. Again, we need to be able to train, as General Neller said and CNO has said, to the high-end fight. That's a great place to train to the high-end fight. And you can do everything you do and talk in the theory books and all that stuff and training, trains actually in garrison. When you get out and you get on the road, you go someplace else, you take your unit out there, you focus on the task at hand. It's great training in Alaska.
Also a lot of CAS opportunities.
Absolutely.
Admiral, have you ever trained at J Park?
I have not. I'm a helicopter pilot, so we try to stay out of those cold weather areas if we can. I will comment that one of the critical things, whether in Alaska or other places, that we need to continue to invest in is the threat simulations or the actual threats on the range. That is one of the places where we've, I'll say, fallen a little bit behind. I think there's some investment in our budget request exactly for that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your service and thank you for being here. Admiral Grosslags, I wanted to ask you, I think last year I asked the question, I assume it's the same answer, that the lift fan facility down at Cherry Point's still a priority. And it looks like we're probably 2 or 3 years away from beginning to see a flow of Joint Strike Fighters. Woke up thinking about it this morning. Going down to that area. So do you feel like we were talking about the limits at the Rolls-Royce factory and the need to stand this thing up? Is the run rate and reaching maximum capacity at the Rolls-Royce facility roughly the same, so that the need is still, priority is still there?
Yes, sir, the priority is still there, and as we were talking just a minute ago about the combating the cost of sustaining these aircraft, one of the things that we need to do sooner, and one of the things that has been a large topic of discussion over the last 6 months or so with the F-35 program office and all the services, is standing up that depot capability across the board, organic depot capability, much more quickly. So we're trying to pull all of that stuff to the left so that we can not only support the aircraft more cost effectively, but in cases like this, just support the aircraft, because the vendors, the OEMs, are quickly, I believe, going to be in a spot where they're trying to support a significant increase in production. At the same time, they're seeing increase in demand for their repair capability.
Yeah.
And that's truly our challenge.
That actually, just to finish this thought and move to a related topic, I've worked with the state legislature, and they're negotiating a budget right now that is a specific appropriation for things that the states can do to anticipate some of the broader needs that will occur with getting the lift fan facility there, and maybe an increase in depot operations down there. Another topic that came up that I told the legislature to look at is the potential hangar capacity to really be able to expand and leverage that site down there. Is that something that you all agree is a potential and a part of that solution?
Senator, we're already starting to lay in the money in our 5-year plan to start to build out Cherry Point. So part of that is hangars. It's ramp improvements to handle F-35 and line. So not only the lift facility at the FRC, but also to the hangars and the construction we need in the simulator buildings to bring in F-35. So we're starting to get to a healthier ramp. We could certainly use more of them faster to replace those older airplanes that we're using up. But that money is starting to go into budget now to go build those hangars and build those facilities.
There are a number, if you all think more broadly about when you do that and you increase the operations, the number of either civilian or uniformed personnel that are going to be down there, to the extent that that suggests some needs for an underlying infrastructure that may be appropriate for state investment, I would very much appreciate. We've certainly gotten the attention. I for one, wouldn't want you to put the lift fan facility or the hangar in any place that's not what you all consider to be the best and highest use. So if you've arrived at the conclusion that Cherry Point is one of those places, what I would also like to do is make sure that we're ahead of the curve on things that we may be able to work with the state legislature and the governor, who are very open and supportive, because it has an economic impact for the state. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything at the state and local level to knock down any other challenges that come when you expand the capacity down there.
Well, a lot of the infrastructure at Cherry Point, sir, is World War II infrastructure. It has not been improved since then. So this is sorely needed out there, and it's in the plan right now. So we'll look forward to teaming with the state of North Carolina to build hangars and build facilities as quickly as we can, so we got a place to bed these airplanes down.
And we will we'll probably submit some questions for the record. Mr. Chair, I apologize for coming late. I've got to go off to another commitment, but I wanted to thank you all. I appreciate you getting it on the priorities list, and appreciate your feedback on anything we can do to facilitate the process. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Davis and Admiral Miller, when Congress agrees to support an administration request for multi-year procurement authority, it is a serious matter. And this year, the Department is seeking authority to enter into contracts for economic order quantity items with the F-35 contract. EOQ contracting authority is typically limited to the programs that have been approved for multi-year contracting authority. So why is the department asking for a multi-year-like contracting authority when the F-35 program has not completed operational testing? And how can you assure us that this is a low-risk kind of a authorization?
Senator, I'll take that one if I may. What we're specifically asking for is taking approximately 4% of the FY19 and 4% of the FY20 EOQ and pulling it forward and executing it with the FY18 EOQ. So it's a total across all the services, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force, of about $660 million that we would pull forward. That enables Lockheed and the other vendors, makers of the airplanes, the engines, et cetera, to go out and buy those long lead materials and get the economic order quantity cost savings. What and outside agencies have told us, as well as our own calculations, the savings associated with pulling that money forward would be about $800 million across the three services for the aircraft, reduction in aircraft unit costs, because we're able to pull that relatively small amount of money forward. So it's not additional money. It's money that would already be spent in FY19 or FY20 for those lots of airplanes. It's only 4% of the EOQ in each one of those years, and it does not commit the services nor the Congress to actually buying a set number of aircraft in those years. So it is not a multi-year procurement from that extent. We are committing to absolutely nothing other than a cost savings.
Well, that's good. Because I was going to say, if we're committing to absolutely nothing, why do you even need authorization? But be that as it may. So we'll be talking with you further about that. I have a question regarding, this is for General Davis. The Commandant's unfunded priority list includes a request for 2 C-40A aircraft this year, similar to the request the Commandant made last year. And last year, the Congress provided 2 C-40 aircraft for the Navy in accordance with the CNO's unfunded priority list, but failed to address the Commandant's request. I understand that the current aging C-9 aircraft that the C-40s would be replacing are now, in the words of Reserve Commander Lieutenant General McMillan, hard down and not safe to fly. General Davis, do you agree that General McMillan's assessment, with his assessment, and if you agree that they are hard down and not safe to fly, why doesn't the budget request fix this problem?
Senator Hirono, thanks for the question. I would say the C9s are not only hard down, but we've transitioned them out of the Marine Corps inventory. They're gone. The folks that were maintaining, we were the only people in the United States military flying those airplanes, those old C9s. It's very difficult to get them parts, to get them worked on, and it was frankly. We thought it was too much of a high-risk proposition to be flying our Marines around on those airplanes. So we transitioned them out. So they're out of the inventory now. We don't own them anymore. We have a lot of requirements. So the C-40s are on the unfunded priority list, but if you looked at our other inventory challenges, and as a nation's force and readiness, what we have to be able to do, we do need those C-40s, but we also need F-35s, we need 53 kilos, we need C-130Js, even more. So we are asking for the C-40s, but as far as on a rank order priority, at the end of the day, the nation needs the Marine Corps to be able to go forward. And I have no options for the jets, I have no options for the helicopters, I have no options for the C-130Js. So I had to put the priority there. It's not a perfect world, but we laid out what we thought we were going to be called on to do as a nation. But right now, to fill that mission, we count on the Navy to fly us around when they can. We use C-130s to go with the cargo seats, or commercial carriers to do the C-40 mission right now.
So with the C-9 aircraft out of your inventory, has that impeded the operational support aircraft mission flown by the Marine Corps Reserve?
It has the Marine Corps Reserves flying the UC-35 and the UC-12, but for the bigger missions, like and we transitioned VMR-1 down to be a reserve unit down there in Texas. We're waiting for airplanes to arrive. They're co-located with some of the Navy C-40s that are there, and looking for some help from this body to get those airplanes. It's just there's not enough money in our budget to cover down on everything, so they are on the unfunded priority list, ma'am.
And then would you consider the need for the C-40 replacements critical at this point for cargo and passenger movement?
They are critical for cargo and passenger movement, but also, too, we have warfighting requirements that have to be met as well, ma'am, and that's why they're not right at the top of the list.
You and I talked about the problem of corrosion, Admiral Miller, and this is something that Admiral Grosskлагs, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Close enough? Sorry.
Gross clogs.
Grosskлагs. About 2 years ago, Rear Admiral Manazir, speaking before a conference here in D.C., said that the corrosion damage on the F-18 fleet was more than expected. Many Navy and Marine Corps airplanes and helicopters are grounded due to corrosion issues. As corrosion costs the department about $20 billion annually, it seems to make sense to provide for preventing corrosion where possible, including robust R&D work in this area. So can you tell me how the FY18 budget request impacts the department's corrosion program, and what the Department of the Navy is doing in terms of meeting the challenges caused by corrosion, and are steps being taken in new acquisition programs to ensure that, to the extent possible, corrosion can be controlled or prevented?
I can tell you that there is not a specific RDT&E line or other line for corrosion prevention in our budget. There are funded corrosion efforts that are embedded in a number of lines. I'll give you at least one example from aviation, and we can go beyond that if you want. We fund today about 65 individuals that are called our corrosion maintenance readiness team. And those individuals are at every one of our fleet sites. And their sole purpose in life is to help the squadron maintenance professionals understand what they need to do in terms of corrosion prevention work on the aircraft in those squadrons. We've been doing that. We started that back in about 2011. We started with F-18s because of the very issue that you mentioned earlier. And we had gotten away from it. We had gotten away from doing that basic level of corrosion control at some of our squadrons. This has reinvigorated that, and we're starting to see the benefits. And so as we've been tracking this, what we have been measuring is the change in the number of corrosion hours that our depot artisans have to do on aircraft in areas that should have been done at the squadron level. And for those aircraft that we started this on several years ago, we are seeing a significant decrease in the labor hours at the depot. So we know we're having an impact, and it's worth the investment in this particular area. On the research and development side, I can also tell you we have about 9 ongoing projects with universities around the nation where we're involved in basic research on materials and coatings and that type of thing. We also have, as of today, about 60 funded projects that are being run. This was OSD money that was given to the services. We have about 60 projects that we are running with various organizations and companies around the nation, again, looking at materials, coatings, how to combine the two, and you know, how to stay away from drop and sink on the word I'm looking for, but how to prevent dissimilar metal corrosion, even in cases where, from a technical aircraft structure aspect, it may make sense. And I'll give you an example. Our F-18Es and Fs, considerably greater use of composites, a titanium center barrel. These are as opposed to our F-18A through D, where we're seeing the problems that you mentioned earlier and that Admiral Manazar talked about. So on F-18E and F, we're seeing significantly less of that deeply embedded corrosion in the aircraft because we changed materials, we changed the build process, and we added corrosion protection into those aircraft as we built them.
I think it's really important that that you are paying attention to the corrosion issue because the lives of our the lifetime use of our aircraft can be extended by that kind of attention to that matter. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hirono. General Davis, let's talk about the CH-53K and the costs having a marked rise. Can you explain the causes of the cost inflation?
I can, sir. Just a couple things. The costs are staying in band with what the estimates that we have. There's no threat of a non-McCurdy breach or anything like that, so we're staying inside the band for the costs. Sometimes people get confused what the costs are. Our acquisition costs really staying very close to what we originally projected. A lot of times people dump in there's a cost out there that includes the military construction, includes all spare parts, all the engineering, and the cost of the airplane. But when you compare apples to apples, we're staying very close to our original cost. We did have a quill problem that we worked our way through last year. We are going to build the airplane up in Connecticut. Okay, so some of the labor rates that we dealt with Sikorsky and Lockheed Corporation to build the airplane. But at the end of the day, this airplane's going to, right now what we're seeing in tests, it's an incredible capability. We have to work every day.
Another winner.
Well, it is actually, and there's nothing like it in the world that does what the 53 Kilo will do. And it's designed with kind of a clean sheet design to take a Marine battalion's worth of gear and lift that in one period of darkness from a sea base ashore at a 100-mile distance. That's a 36,000-pound lift capability. No airplane in the world can do that. The 53K can. So it's an incredible capability. You know, I would tell you that as a guy who spent a lot of time in college working for minimum wage, you want to keep all the costs of these things down. I think we need to hawk that, and Admiral Grossklags, Admiral Miller, and myself, the Commandant, work very hard to keep the costs under control and make sure that the company is doing right by us, right by the taxpayer, and keeping costs out. What we are finding is an airplane that is very easy to maintain. So if you look at the amount of hours, that not just what it costs to buy it, but how many man hours it takes to maintain the airplane, a much easier airplane to maintain and sustain than the 53 Echo. And I think also, too, is you and I have talked, Senator Hirono, about the lessons learned about the 53 Echo and what we have to do to extract maximum value from that airplane. We did an independent range review, and frankly, we stole a playbook from the United States Army, who was doing a better job resetting their helicopters than we were. And we're adopting that very same strategy the United States Army did. So bringing all of our 53 Echoes out, resetting them completely, and those airplanes in the backside of that reset are much lower cost per flight hour. They're running about half what it costs to run an airplane that's not been through reset. A properly reset, sustained airplane is half the cost per flight hour, which is a lot of money. So if we maintain it, we sustain it, we train those enlisted Marines the right way, we'll be in much better shape, and we'll keep the cost, the total ownership cost of 53 Kilo down and have a winning capability for our nation.
So the cost is no surprise.
It's right now it's an expensive airplane, but it's staying within its cost band, and we have every intention of keeping within its cost band, sir.
The top of it.
It's not. We don't want it to go to the top because we go to the top, we go in a non-McCurdy breach. We're not interested in that. We're interested in keeping that very close to what the original estimates were for that airplane.
You think Admiral Grossklags could fly it?
I do, and I think he would actually want to fly that one in cold weather too, because the Marines do fly your helicopters in cold weather. And I've seen pictures of Navy helicopters in my first deployment up north of the Arctic Circle in some very cold weather. So
Intentionally.
Admiral Grossklags.
Yes, sir.
I guess this is the first hearing you've ever had in which your name has been mispronounced. I'm
Absolutely.
so sorry for that. Let's talk about the Osprey.
There's a request for multi-year procurement for 7 years. Can you describe the need for such a long multi-year? And General Davis, I understand the Marine Corps is studying the potential need to increase the V-22 program of record from 360 to 380. Can you update us on that? So, Admiral
I'll
Gross.
start with the multi-year and then pass it over to the general. 7 years, typically we ask for 5 years for a multi-year. 7 years would enable us to buy the remaining total of 67 Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force aircraft that are currently in the 3 services plans, notwithstanding your question about potentially increasing the Marine Corps requirement. Otherwise, if we just got a 5-year multi-year, we would have the 2 years and about 20 plus airplanes hanging out. We've got the CAPE single-year cost estimate, which is a foundational piece of understanding what our savings will be by going to a multi-year. Last week, we received the not-to-exceed letters from the OEMs, Bell and Boeing in this case, that really justify that, and you should see that package coming over here to the Hill shortly. But the savings in those NTE letters get us 10% per aircraft. So without getting into the discrete costs right now, we're looking at about $650 million plus of savings across that 7-year multi-year. So it is a bit unusual task for 7 vice 5, but we think it's justifiable given the savings and the fact that if we leave 2 years hanging out on the end, those aircraft will certainly cost us more than if we were able to include them in the multi-year.
General Davis?
Sir, we have a study that looks at would we want to increase the total program of record of V-22, and as you know, the Marine Corps, we pride ourselves in our ability to stay on our mark out there as far as staying with the program of record. On V-22, though, the priority for us is this thing that Admiral Grossklags talked about earlier, is this Common Configuration Reliability and Maintainability Initiative, which is going to basically take all of our earliest block V-22s through. Basically, it's more than a reset. It's bring up to a common configuration. We introduced the V-22 in 2007 and sent it directly into combat, and every single year we had it in combat, we would have these urgent changes to make sure we were adapting the airplane, threat conditions, reliability conditions for the battlefield. And on the back side of that, one of our range reviews showed us that we had about 77 different variations of V-22s in the Marine Corps. And if you're a young enlisted Marine, that makes it very difficult to maintain and get high readiness rates and high maintenance rates out of that airplane. So job one for us is to make them all one configuration V-22, one parts list for the V-22, high reliability components on there, and drive costs out of owning that airplane. That's job one for us right now, and we'll look at increasing buying an additional 20 airplanes. But right now we want to continue our fielding and deliver a very high readiness aircraft to the fleet, and that requires new nacelles, which is about where 52% of the readiness challenges in a V-22 reside, and then making them so we have one parts list, one repair manual, and one configuration of V-22.
Senator, if I may, normally when we're having a V-22 conversation, I'd be silent, but this year is different in that this budget, the 18 budget, is the first year of the CMV 22 for the Navy. Our request is for 6 aircraft, and the CMV 22 takes a Marine Corps MV-22, adds some extra fuel, puts an intercom for passengers in the back, and also adds a SATCOM radio for long-distance operations overseas. And this is going to replace the carrier onboard delivery, the C2, for our carrier strike groups and embedded on our aircraft carriers. The reason for this change and the reason that we're making the move to the CMV-22 twofold. One, our CODs are old and need to be recapitalized. And secondly, and most importantly, you'll see that the CMV-22s are going to be tied to our F-35C deployments on the carriers. It's the only thing that can actually carry the engine on board. And that's clearly going to be critical as we sustain that airplane into the future. So CMV-22 will now be a part of the air wing of the future.
Last question, Admiral Miller. What do you think about General Davis's upcoming retirement?
I think it's a great day to celebrate a fantastic Marine who's dedicated his entire life to the defense of this country, sir.
So do I. Is this sort of career you'd recommend to the next generation?
In a heartbeat. Matter of fact, I'd do a redo if I could, and I'm sure he would as well.
General Davis, you have the last word.
I walked in the recruiting office 40 years ago as a college freshman, needing discipline. I found that in the United States Marine Corps, and I didn't even know they had airplanes. So the fact that I'm running Marine Corps Aviation, the three of us, we defend, support and defend the greatest country the world's ever seen. It's been an absolute honor every single day on active duty. I'll miss it, but like Cincinnati, I'll be ready to go help out in any way I can in the years that come. Love this country, love the Corps, love the Naval Services. Semper Fidelis.
Thank you very much. Let's get our questions for the record in by Friday afternoon.
And General Davis, we want to wish you the best in your retirement. And didn't you tell me that your wife wanted to move to Hawaii?
She does. She does. She was very angry that I never got orders to Hawaii in 37 years. So
This hearing is adjourned.